Ancestrylands, ancestrylands.com. Uh, I'm going to talk a little bit about a thought I had. Just getting off a night shift working. I'm on the road. You're live with Uncle Phil. Ancestrylands, ancestrylands.com. $ Ancestrylands on Cash App, Ancestrylands on Venmo. Continue to donate. Support the show. I'm going to talk to you all about the lone wolf versus the wolf pack, especially this mentality. I want to say that the reason why I'm doing this video is last night at work in the hospital, I met two very successful African American male nurses. Both have businesses, real estate, stocks, crypto, your typical 30-year-old men who are invested with rental homes, both successful in their own right, taking a similar path that I've done with real estate and a nursing career to fund those business ventures. And the reason why I titled this the lone wolf versus the wolf pack is that, me being 42, kind of a little bit older, I'm the charge nurse on the floor. And when I walked in, the two gentlemen, they're working together and they had been there for about 4 hours with each other. Shout out to you guys, Earl and Adler. And, they had been working with each other for 4 hours and they weren't sitting within a sight of each other, let alone talking to each other. And this isn't it because of their a beef or anything else like this, but a lot of times nurses, we kind of work in silos and we'll get help when we need to. But, not everyone is commingling, if you will. And as I'm starting the shift, I introduce myself to them. How you doing? Go up, give them a handshake. I'm a little bit of older, growner person, so I tend to, if I see someone and I don't know them, I'll go up and approach them, introduce myself. I've learned that in business, as when I was a nurse, I wouldn't approach people automatically. But now that I'm in business, I take it upon myself to go and directly approach people, give them a handshake, kind of like up in your face kind of guy. There's no more reservations about that. Where when I was a younger nurse, exactly the same age as them, in my 30s, I had more of like, I'm not going to speak to somebody till they speak to me. And that's not to say these young men were in that same mindset. But I knew they were there as nurses, but they also had a business background, which I did not know at the time. And, they're working individually, although if someone asked for help, they would help each other. And, once I talked to the first gentleman, he's ask him about himself, how you doing, where you're from, just basic conversational pieces there. And this is very rare because we're on a nursing floor and it's all men working, so it's a very different dynamic than what you're used to. And I found out, both the guys are from Florida, both the guys are doing real estate, both the guys are in stocks, that both the guys are in crypto. After I speak to them individually, and ask them about themselves, how you doing, getting the conversation started just to meet and see who they are and find out where they're from and a little bit of their history. And, one guy actually has a podcast going on. He's on Spotify and other networks. And the other gentleman is, in addition to nursing, he does getting business mentorship from a million, someone that's obviously mentoring him in business and all the things that follow with that. The funny thing was these two never talked to each other. When I say never talked to each other, outside of working as nurses, they never bothered to find anything more about than just a casual exchange. And they're travel nurses. And after I spoke to them both, and I'm like, man, you guys are like closely connected. One wants to do life insurance, and you hear all the things about life insurance policies and everything else that goes with that. And I'm like, this guy already doing that with life insurance, And it kind of took me conversing with them separately and then conversing with them together for them to even realize that they had been passing each other up and never sat down to kind of have a casual conversation to find out more and know that these guys come from the same state, Florida. They're in the same field. I mean, like, you both own rental units. And I am a land guy, and I'm like, all three of us are doing real estate. All three of us private invest in stock. All three of us are interested in insurance policies. You know, like there's a network right here that's just being established, and that's three black men. men of color working on a nursing unit, talking about this outside of our nursing duties when we're having our free time. And I was just sitting there like, man, you guys, had I not been here, you guys would never have this conversation. And that's the point of the video right now, is that are men in general dedicated to being the wolf, the lone wolf. That's why I put the picture of the lone wolf versus the man with the wolf pack. And what I notice is that successful men tend to operate in silos. They're not, they might have networks, but some of the problem, and that may be a problem going on with men in general, most men want to go it alone. You have men going their own way, but I think men do that within their own men group. Every man is his own lone ranger, his lone wolf. And that's the advantage that women have over us, is that they tend to pack together. When I say pack together, is women, coalesce around each other, and they form groups even when they're at their strength or their strongest or their weakest. And what I'm seeing is that men, we don't do that. That's a handicap for us. Men feel more strength in their solidarity and their isolation and their ability um, to kind of handle everything on their own. And to me, that is a sign of strength, but it can also be a weakness too as well. Because outside the person who's guiding you, you really don't have a whole lot of external forces. One of the gentlemen was like, "Yeah, everybody in my group is an alpha," and I'm like, "Well, then if everybody's your group's an alpha, then the order of what is an alpha is the alpha of the alphas," and there's nothing wrong with that. But again, a lot of times you all are can be individuals, kind of operating like mercenaries. It's not a real network, and I'm not disparaging his network, but it's like you have opportunities and doors that could be opened by a person that's sitting right next to you, but because you're securing the network that you have, you're not building any new connections. you know because a lot of times in these little chambers that we put ourselves in, we don't seek outside, to build outside networks. We feel very insulated in, our core group, our inner circle, if you will. And I think that's a detriment, because what I saw in this example is like, here you guys are having worked with each other more than once. Here you guys are sitting a couple hours. It's just you two working here together. And you've never even talked anything past a glance, what's up, whatever else, working in your silos. And here now conversations being, kind of brought in by, me being 42, they're both 32, same age, and they had a lot more in common than they even realized. And that would have never been known had I not sat there and been a bridge between them. And sometimes success can make you box yourself in, whereas you don't build connections. It's a little bit different for me because I travel. I have to go to a lot of places that are different, not just as a travel nurse on assignment, but I'm traveling, leaving home or going places. And it's not very uncommon for me to be a stranger in an area, and I have to reach out and speak to people. And I've noticed with that, I was like, man, if I wasn't here, there was a clear opportunity, a missed opportunity for you all to learn about stuff. And you could have them as a guest on your podcast. You don't go out into the world looking to bring the world into you. You go out in the world looking to bring yourself onto the world. Let me say that again. A lot of times I feel that successful people in general who are not world movers, you know, we go out into the world wanting to bring ourselves onto the world instead of taking the world into us. It's the same way, and when I say that, it's mean when I saw these gentlemen, I went up to meet them, greet them. They weren't coming up to me to greet me. That wasn't our initial reaction. It was, hey, how you doing? Cool. But I went up to talk to them in person. How you doing? My name's Phil Davis. I work here, blah, 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 ask some questions. It wasn't just a passing moment. I took time to develop the relationship with them in a way that could foster conversation to learn more about each other. And we're three men of color, but we didn't bond off of a color, connection. We were just all working in our silos. And it's crazy because that happened even later as they started to talk a little bit more. I can see them connecting. And I'm like, hey, maybe you should be on his podcast and get them. You get a podcast, so you do one later. And I was like, now you have a new network extended into a different area. It never occurred to them that was that possibility. So a lot of times people are hearing about networking and they go to places to network, but they don't network in their regular environment. And nine times out of 10, you'll learn more from your regular day people. There's an opportunity to network there more so than going to an event. Because you never know the person walking by you, what they could know or can't know, or who they know. I'll go on to elaborate that on a second. So when I'm getting towards the end of my shift, nurses, we have to give report, meaning that when you're getting off your shift, you can't just walk out and clock out. You have to tell them what's going on with patients, illnesses, things like that, certain metrics that we have to hand off to the next nurse. And the next nurse, he has and I've seen this nurse plenty of times, but we don't work in the same units. I just happened to align talking to this nurse. And he was wearing a West Virginia jacket. And I'm like, hey, man, you went to West Virginia? Strange for somebody in California to be wearing a West Virginia jacket. He's like, yeah, I went to West Virginia. I said, yeah. He's like, I lived there. And I'm like, what years did you live there? Because everybody knows, I know Avon Coburn. And, he was in West Virginia. And he's like, yeah, I've heard of Avon. And I'm like, wow, this guy heard of a person I went to high school with. You've seen him in my videos, Avon. And I'm all the way out and across the country, and he knows about a person I went to high school with. He's thinking that, oh, this is just a random person that, he knows. And I said, no, I called him on his birthday. I actually know him. He does podcasts with me, things like that. And he's like, wow, that's crazy. And then I said, man, I met another nurse at a different hospital. And he said her name. And I'm like, I used to work with her. So he already knew a person that I had worked with at another hospital. He's like, yeah, us West Virginians know each other wherever we are, even if it's three of us in a whole state. A nice little joke there. And I'm telling him, he's from back east. And I'm like, man, that's crazy. And the I mean, he knew a person that I grew up with, or I knew a person that he knows is now famous. And then these guys are looking at me connect with another person, and I was trying to impart upon them is like, notice the way that networking happens. And it doesn't mean that you have to go and promote a business, but practicing the art of going up and talking to people that you have no connection with, no whatsoever, and you take away something. And the guy and I started talking about he has kids and things like that. That's how business is done. It's not done in a suit sometimes. Sometimes your connection, the connection to the suit can be sometimes a person in sweats or scrubs in this aspect, this example. Not a scrub, but a person wearing scrubs and medical scrubs. And I think sometimes in business we forget that. We think that the network is always at the event. But I practice life networking because you never know who someone else knows. And for instance, one of the nurses, when I talked to him at first, I had a track coach, that we talked about before, Lance Gittins, because this guy grew up in Guyana in South America. And I'm like, yeah, my track coach ran for Guyana. And I believe in the 96, he was in the trials for them. He's like, yeah, he has records. And I was like, he's like, Gittins. Oh, that name. He's like, yeah, it's right. I'm like, that was the first initial thing when I walked up to him when I found out something about him. And I had a common point with him. And I was like, yeah, it was my track coach in college. He knew him, despite being 10 years younger, even though my track coach was older than I was. And it's like, It's such a small world. We think people are so far away from us, but they're closer than you think. And a lot of times you might be in an area where you have opportunities to strike up conversations with people, and you don't. And you're missing business opportunities to connect with people because you don't have your representative on. We get into these marketing or networking events, and then we put on the I'm a networker, suit. I'm a networker. But we don't network in our regular lives where things count. And here I am talking to two people who are doing real estate just as like I was 10 years ago. They're doing what I started to do once I met my wife and began my journey right now. I've been doing this for almost 5 years. So this is they're a little bit ahead. They're way ahead of me actually, and I'm happy to see younger men doing that. But again, I said to him, I was like, your ability to network, and there was still some rejection of that. And again, that may be because of young egos, where you're successful and you're kind of doing your own thing, and there may not be room that young people feel in their universe to have anything outside of what they're comfortable with. They're already established circle. And I was telling one of the gentlemen that too as well. You can't create a universe, because we were talking about relationships, marriage and those other things. And I told him, I said, man, you can't have a universe that no one else can fit in. And the reason why I say that is that, a lot of younger men, they do want relationships. They do want women. Despite what I hear all the time about, manosphere and alpha male and all of that stuff. Men want a woman with them. I've never met a man. I've met a man. I met more men who tell me they could live without it, but more than often than not, they're really asking that they want it. They just won't admit it. That's pride and ego. A lot of men won't admit that, hey, I do want a woman in my life. I do want someone to be there. And some men do. And there's always the fear of being shamed for it. You're always going to be ridiculed for wanting a woman to be with you and not be lonely. I don't think it's lonely. Humans are social creatures. What's wrong with wanting a woman there to be in your life with you, to share that with, to grow? We want kids, but somehow we can say definitively we want kids someday, which means we want kids. Ask a man a question, he's never going to give you a straight answer. Very few will. And it's like, do you want kids? It's either yes or no. Most of the times they'll say someday, which is still a yes. Technically, it's a yes. But at the same time, you still need a woman for that. And most men can't admit that within themselves, that, yeah, you're saying yes, you do want a woman. That's what you're saying. And I'm telling them there's nothing wrong with that. Or we want kids without somehow getting a woman, like it's not part of the 1 + 1 = 2 math. But it is. It's required. I mean, I don't know how else you're going to do it. You can do all these extra outside where surrogacy or, I mean, you can do a million and one different things, artificial wounds. But most of the time, men want women. They want a person that they can either ride with, build with. And in these young men cases, they reminded me of myself with you want a woman that fits along with your program. And what I said to him was that if you are the most high value, alpha, whatever else male, if there's no way to get into your universe, there's not a way to get into the Kuiper belt. If anyone else want to talk about the Kuiper belt, on the edge of our where the planets are, there's an asteroid belt that protects us from comets or whatever else. It's like a natural barrier. But it's very hard for things to penetrate into there. And when men have a well constructed universe where they're building, they have businesses, they have incomes, I have this, I have that going, and you want a family to fit within that universe. And I told him, I said, in a universe, there's orbits. You got 8 planets in there, there's orbits. And if you throw another planet in there, when a woman comes into your universe, into your life, your world, you can't just throw them in there and think that that's going to work with all the things orbiting around you. And you can't create it to the point where You just place them on the planet that you exist on and think that everything's going to operate smoothly. They got to work for that. You can't just give them a planet and say, here is yours to have and populate. And at the same time, if you want them to exist within your universe, first you got to have space. You got to have space for them to exist. You can't just say, well, you got to come in my world and here are the rules and this, and this. And I also ask him is that you got to realize how you present to a person too as well. You know, when you present as there's only one way in, one way out, then it's going to be very hard for any woman, qualified or not, to penetrate that, to feel like they want to be welcome in that. My wife had some of the similar walls up because she was dedicated to going to school and finishing up her bachelor's degree when I met her. And she had more of the like, I can't do this, I can't do that because it's going to get in the way of my degree. Because she took it as as an or. You you either do this or you do that. If I go this way, if I'm in a relationship, I can't get my degree. So it always was an or. And I told her, I was like, why can't it just ever be an and? Why can't you, like, one of our biggest things was like, having a family. And I'm like, well, I have enough money or income through my nursing to support us while you go to school. That's and. You can go to school and not have to work to get your degree. Because it's just going to take longer with you working and having to divide your time up rather than to go to school full time. Then it was like, well, hey, I want a family. And it was again, she gave to me with the or. Well, I'm going to have a family, I can't go to school. And I was like, why can't you go to school? Well, who's going to, I was like, well, I'll take care of the baby when you go to school. That's the and. And again, when you have that boss mindset, you have to create more possibilities for yourself and others around you. You can't just be the measure of success, just like the measure of discipline. And it's sometimes hard talking to younger men who are not open to hearing something that alters or has it causes them to have to evolve about beyond themselves. And I told the younger guy, I said, listen, what's better than a person who made themselves a millionaire? He's like, what? I was like, a person who can make other people millionaires. Because again, when you're successful, do you have the ability to make others around you successful? You see that in the NBA all the time. People who are an all-star player on a losing team. But again, the reason that is in some cases is not because there's not the talent there. It's because the all-star doesn't know how to work and operate within a team. They can score 50, but everyone else is scoring single-digit numbers. And it's not because the all-star is great. Sometimes they're not a good match for the team. Yes, you being a millionaire is great, but can you make others around you just as successful? And then it's like, well, I don't want to have to teach and program. And I told him, I said, a leader is always a teacher at the same time because you're leading by example. You're constantly showing people that your way of following, they're following a path that you're leading. So, and again, it was something that sometimes younger men are given, and in my opinion, broken information that allows them to single follow one path and not be open to others. Not realize that you can't always come to life with demands and think that demand, or else will always get you somewhere because you're dealing from a trauma based standpoint. You're bringing your pain to the forefront, and everyone is being measured up to that pain. Everyone's like, okay, do you look like this person? Oh, you got a bald head, your skin color's close to this, you're out of here. You exclude people by using your trauma as the measure people have to get past without giving them um, their chance to succeed or fail. But again, you got to have space in your universe. You got to have room for them to occupy. And the reason why I say that is that a lone wolf cannot take down the same kind of prey a wolf pack can. In order to bring a big bison down, a wolf pack has to work together, and not everyone can bite at the same part. They all have to take a different space on the bison and bring it down, or a buffalo. Not every wolf can bite on. If every wolf was biting on one spot, the buffalo would fall on top, killing all the wolves. So again, the pack has different responsibilities, and not every member always does the right thing at the right time. But the pack wins more and gets better kills than they do with the lone wolf. Yes, when the lone wolf gets a kill, it eats 100% of the meat it catches and kills in there so long as another competitor doesn't come and take it. But still, they're still consuming 100% of that meat. They don't have to share it with anyone else. But again, when famine comes or things like that, they also have to starve alone. They can't be brought any food. If they're sick or injured, there's they can't be brought anything that now the pack can bring in and hunt for them when they're not there. Plus, on top of that, there are no mating possibilities. The lone wolf exists in its own in its own solitude. That's fine, but eventually you go down the road where there is space for no one. Because every time you do have space, you're meeting people who value you, and the standards for what you require others to get through that into that universe becomes higher. So they got to get through a denser asteroid field. They got to get through a denser Kuiper belt. And it really doesn't allow people in. The space becomes tighter and tighter. And what you do is you see yourself closing possibilities off to others that could get into your universe, but there's no space. That's what I'm saying. A wolf pack has space for the members to make the hunt, to take down the big prey in life. But a lot of times people are going lone wolf because they want to be successful, but they don't look at how to connect to others to create a nice strong wolf pack. And again, you have a thing called super packs, where if you had more than one person who's successful, you get a group of them together, and now you got a super pack. Wolves operate in the same way because we're doing good. We feel that we're doing good, but we can't make anyone else around us good. We just are happy it's us, the rogue. But that doesn't work well because a man or a woman would be qualified as being more successful. And I said it to this one guy, this young gentleman. I said, if I were a business partner and I saw a man who had a family as opposed to a man who works for himself, I choose the family man every time. He said, why? I said, because when I enter into a business relationship with the family man, he's working to be successful, not for just for himself, but he's doing it for his wife and his children. And the same way with my business is that I've had one of the people that works for me, when someone made a mistake in my business, I was most upset about it. And they were saying, well, that happens. Is business. But it wasn't for me. Because I said, while you say that, this business, my family eats from this business. So I don't have the same luxury that you do and this not working. It has to work for me. I have to be successful because I have to feed my children from this income. So if I'm successful, they can be successful. They have better opportunities. They have better room to grow. And again, that mindset is different from a person who is who's an individual that can just move to the next opportunity. So who do you want to work with if you have a business partner? I'm going to choose the family man every time because if he's doing this, he's doing it for this. If he needs it to be successful, he's going to work that much harder. And I told him this. I said, listen, it's the same way as this. A person trying to save their family. You're in a car accident. All right. And you're in a room with a guy who has his wife and his children in there. All right. In that room is a mountain lion, whatever. And that man has to get through the mountain lion to save his family. Okay. You got a better chance of that guy doing it than a person who's a single rescuer that is going in there and fighting and is just trying to save three, four strangers' lives. And I said, a father will give up his life to save his family, in most cases. So who do you want coming in to save you? You want me coming in, or you want Stranger Joe next door coming in to try to save you? Because if I have my children there, you can bet a father's going to come and try to come to his family's rescue. That's the difference. If it's a lifeguard or something else like that, even they tell you in lifeguard, if the person's going to drown, if the person that you're trying to save out in the sea, they tell lifeguards that if they're at risk of drowning you and you can't save them, you let them go and save yourself. So try saying that to a parent and that's their child drowning. The parent's not going to let that child go. They're not. That's the difference. And that's why sometimes a person with the family, they have more to lose than you do. Sometimes the better person that you want, that you can do business with. You're going to be more successful. Now, if you don't want to have a family, you don't want to, I mean, that's fine too as well. But understand that, there's a reason why presidents have families. They're married with children. Because again, that when they have to lose in a war is different than a single person sending people off to die in a war. A president with a daughter's a son can relate to a mother who's lost their son in a war because they're a parent. They may not understand loss, but they understand what it feels like to cry for your child. They can't imagine losing a child, but they can understand the parents' feelings. And if they lost a child, they can relate even more. There's a reason for that. Even if they, have, I mean, even like, Buttigieg, he's still married. You have to have that. There's no single, because again, the priorities are not towards the family. Like people want to feel that, a leader thinks of the people around him as his family. There's a sense of taking care of things. And again, that is one of the reasons why when you're looking at people that you're going to do work with, you want to deal with people who have more to lose because they're working to they have a family around them or other people that they need to be successful. They need to be successful because it's not just their success means others can be successful. There's a big difference. That's the whole point of a wolf pack. The group being successful is more important than the individual. The group hunting down and taking on the big game is much more important than the lone wolf getting his one kill. So again, what men tend to do is we tend to go out and wolf pack it alone. I can do it. I'm good. I got it. I don't need any help. I'm good. And that's where women get the edge on us because they tend to find comfort and safety in the group. I don't mind going out there in my lone pack, but a lone wolf really is not as strong as a wolf pack. It's not, despite what people may think. And it's good to show that hey, I can do some things on my own and all of that, but there's a ceiling to that. What did they say? What's good having all the money in the world if you have no one to share it with? And it's the problem is men think there's a weakness in that, and there's not. When I've had children, when I've had a wife, or I have a wife and had children, I found more strength in me doing things for them than I ever did for myself alone. And I don't think a lot of men will admit that. I don't. I don't think a lot of men would admit that I worked harder to make sure my kids had what they had than I did when it was for myself. Like there are times where I'm working so hard and I'm working and I don't eat and my wife will bring me food. She just make me a salad or bring me something to drink. And that allows me to keep on moving forward. But there was space for my wife to be in my life. Just like she doesn't have to work and I'm providing for her, but there was space. She made space for having a guy like me in her life. And again, you got to make space for people to be in your life. You can't just have, I don't know, but again, it feels good when I have my wife and my kids around me. It feels good when I go to places and I have my children with me and I can try to work for them to be successful. It feels good with them being a motivator for me working hard. It's not the same when I'm doing it for myself. It's not. I mean, how long can you keep that up? If you're 32, can you do 30 years of just living it alone and saying, oh, yeah, this was a worthy life? Humans need connections. We're social animals, social creatures, and there's only so many things a mindset group or a mentor could do because, again, once you've accomplished the goal, once you become a millionaire, once you become a 10 millionaire, again, you just being alone in your life is going to change. Not everyone is built to be able to be alone. We think it's cool, it sounds good, but once you do it for 10, 15, 20 years, it gets old. It does. And then what you do is you see more people around you actually having families. You do. You see people having children and grandchildren, and then you can't take the money with you, man. You can't. One sickness could just take it all. It's security, yes, up until the point where you start using it and you need it more so than anything else. And once you have children, it changes, man. It changes very drastically when you have young children. Being in their lives is more important to me than making all the money in the world. I need enough to keep us going and keeping us afloat. But you never get those moments back when they get older. They're going to be older, they'll be out of the house, and then you're back kind of living a single's life again. They're gone. Most people I know, kids don't live with them. They go on to be successful, and you're back wishing that you had another moment with those young kids. And you don't get those moments back trying to hustle through 60, 70 hours a week. You don't. It's gone. It sounds good that men did that before, but in today's world, I don't know if the men are really necessarily built like that. Because there's a mindset that you got to go along with that. And most of the time, I talk to these men, they want to be good fathers, but they also want to be a breadwinner at the same time. And I'm like, well, in order to be a good father, you got to be in your child's life. And that's not meaning going to work and providing money. You're basically creating in the same environment you would as if you were divorced. I mean, it's the same environment because you're not there, you're not present. And kids want your presence. They don't want presents, they want your presence. Case in point, for Christmas, my kids got all these freaking toys, all these devices and smart stuff like that. And you know, one thing that my kids play with more than anything else is when they went to a friend's birthday party and they got that like slime that's not, it's like it's got a hand and you can fling it and it sticks to the wall and it's like a slime yo-yo or something, but you stick it to the wall and it's like a hand, it's like a frog tongue or something like that, and it's real sticky. It's long and it's sticky. They play with that for hours. They play with that probably more than they play with all their Christmas toys combined, which now are sitting in another box or bin or basket, or some are not even open because the kids, they're collecting dust because the kids don't play with them. They got this new toy and they will play with that until it breaks. It's just fleeting. And the only thing they want is mom and dad to watch them, engage with them. They want you there. And at the end of the day, once you're gone, you can't take anything with you, man. This is not Egypt where you get to take all the money with you and you take, the concubine and the wife and some help for the afterworld. You don't get to take it with you, man. You don't. All the money in the world can't make you happy. You just need enough to make a happy life. But a happy life isn't made by. You know, I've learned that when I made 100,000, it wasn't enough. When I made 200,000, it wasn't enough. When I made 300, near 300,000, I just wanted, it keeps going up and going up and going up. So if you make a million, you'll want to make two. You'll want to make three. You'll want to make four. And after that, millions become common like thousands do. You got to want more for your life. And I think at the end of the day, what we all really want is someone to spend it with, someone to share it with. But the problem is, kind of the world's got it all backwards on what we really want. And we don't really go after what we really want. We go after everything that tries to make us better to be able to pick a person that's higher up on the hog to try to fill in the thing we want. And it all comes crashing down. I didn't, my wife, I wasn't looking for the most beautiful woman to be my wife. I was looking for the most qualified woman to be my wife. And that didn't mean that she had to come with a whole lot of things because it wasn't who I expected it to be. Learned that in life. And I couldn't be happier with that choice despite everything else. because it gets hard. And realistically, whatever you're attracted to today, 10 years from now, you're not going to be attracted to the same thing. You're not. Your wife's not going to look the same. 20 years ago, I had hair. So you need more in life. And people say that, they hear that, they're like, yeah, I get that. But you got to walk it too. You really do. You got to walk. You got to walk the okay out. Meaning that, I didn't have grays in my beard. I had hair. Different look. But 10 years being in a relationship, whatever I liked in year one is not there. What gives you staying power? And men still want to be married. It's not like they're saying no, no marriage, no kids, no nothing. I'm just me. I've never met one man who was like that. They still all want it, but they try to put layers and barriers to entry, which really is just putting them further away from it. And I told him, I said, your greatness is also your greatest weakness, because that doesn't allow you to bring anyone in your life to have space and share your world. It doesn't, because we're leading by the fear of, and not trying to doing a better job of making sure that we're clear on what we want. We have demands, but we're not clear on what we want, because what we want, it's not always 80%. They say tolerate, but tolerate is about 80% of a person. And again, if you don't want to train or program or work with a person and groom and grow them up into things, you could be missing a golden opportunity. Some people want ready-made people, and we're not like that. I tell my wife that all the time. You want your kids to be ready-made, like they're supposed to come out the box knowing this. That's not how people are. You weren't even that way. But we demand that of everyone else around us. And not that way. And I tell them, I was like, even with my kids, man, your kids are smart, man, but they do a lot of dumb stuff. They fight all the time. It's a process of getting them to be older, smart, and intelligent. That takes time. It's a process. And a relationship is a process. And unfortunately for us humans, all the good parts run out while the process is starting to develop. And once it can potentially get better, humans in our society tend to tire out at that point. Because it's not sexy anymore. It's not new car smell. It's not long haul. And anyone who wants long haul, man or woman, even if you have the most nuanced person, you still gotta go long haul. Even if you have the most submissive woman, you still are gonna get tired of her. In the same ways you get tired of wearing the same clothes over and over again. The nice fitted hat that you have, a year or two later, it's never gonna change. Even if you have the perfect woman, but you still will get used to her looks after some time. So again, I always ask people, it's like, if the perfect woman comes up to you, you still are going to have to work with her for 10 years, even if she's submissive, blah, 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 blah. Even if he's the perfect man, and he's got 6 foot tall, 6 feet, whatever, all the perfect sixes. If his hair never grays, you still are going to see the same man, and your human nature will have you less attractive to that man, because it's human nature. You still have to do the work. You still have to be with a person day in and day out and get through the monotony of life. That's what a relationship is. People complaining about the relationships. You've got to train yourself to be able to get through the middle and the end, to the end. Everybody loves to only talk about the beginning. I was talking to the other young gentleman, and everything that he talked about his woman, I said, if she was not supportive of you today, would you be with her? He said no. I said, well, then if it changes later on, would you stay with her? He's like, yeah, I'd be miserable. And I said, then you shouldn't be that. Let that be the thing to be attracted to her by. You can see the wheels turn. He's trying his hardest to reject it. If you're with a woman and she's different because she's the first one to buy into your plan, then later on when you get married and it changes up, you'll confess to be miserable. Then I would say that the problem is that your approval is based upon her buying into your plan. Clear as day. You're looking for someone that is different from one, but they can change. People change all the time. So what she bought in today, she could change her mind tomorrow. And men are looking for absolute guarantees in relationship, and there are none. And women are too, but that's the problem. Everybody's looking for a sure way not to hurt, not to get hurt. And again, that's life's a gamble, man. If you can take risks for a business and you're certain you can do that, well, you're not going to get anywhere if you don't take a risk in life with the person. It's not going to, it's, you definitely can't win if you don't play. Nor can you lose, but you can't win either. That's just the way it is, man. Any which way, folks, I ain't gonna be long on this one. 45 minutes. I'm surprised I can talk this long. I didn't want to do this right now, this podcast. Just being tired. But again, I have to keep work. I gotta feed the beast. I gotta keep pressing the message out, even when the views and the subs ain't all what it is. You gotta keep working it, man. It's the same thing with a business, same thing, anything else. You still gotta keep putting in the same work, even when you don't want to do it. And again, we do it in everywhere else and call it successful, but we won't do it with a person because we're leading by fear. We're scared of getting hurt. Well, you can fail in business and fail in life, and you can also pick yourself back up and keep on moving. Something to think about, folks. Agree or disagree? Like, comment, share. Tell me what you agree with. Tell me what you don't agree with. In any case, I'm your host. I hope you're enlightened, educated, and entertained. Phil Davis, Ancestrylands, ancestrylands.com, folks. Go out and get yourself a piece of property. Take care and have a great weekend. Peace.